Hey, this is Greg Pelican from Trek. I'm sorry for any technical difficulties here. It always seems like there's some sort of challenge using Facebook Live. And anyway, I'm on right now. So I'm happy to be here this morning. And today I'm going to talk a little bit about what is a gravel bike. I mean, it's the hottest trend in the industry right now. You know, we have gravel specific bikes. We have gravel specific gear like tires and wheels. And so I'll talk a little bit like how we got here and also some of the riding opportunities we have in Florida. I actually have four places and great locations where I can show you where I've ridden, and it's a great place to ride. Hey, Doug, how you doing? So basically, how about a little history? So 20 years ago, there weren't gravel bikes, but I came from New England, this cool little town called Bethel, and I owned a shop there, and that's where Cannondale's headquarters were. And so we had a big culture of road cyclists and racing and a big team and everything else. And so what happened in the fall, we would take our cyclocross bikes and we'd ride on all these dirt farm roads. And they looked like a lot like this road in the background that I'm showing here. Like we used to ride this stuff on 28 millimeter tires, and it was kind of borderline a lot of times to just use a road bike, a little bit fatter tires, and we loved doing this stuff. And some of us rode cyclocross and raced that. So sometimes we would ride our cross bikes, sometimes we would ride our road bikes, but it was a lot of fun and kind of got us off the main roads. And there was always a lot of climbing. So I would take my bike, my cross bike, and I'd put a wider range of gears on it because some of these climbs are like a mile long and 10% grade. So, naturally, this kind of created a little bit of interest, and people started racing and making these sort of informal races. And a friend of mine, Stephen Badger from Roxbury, created a race called the Tour of Roxbury, or TDR. And it had kind of a cult following. You had to be invited to go to this race, and it had all these dirt sectors. And it was funny. He raced a lot in New York City, and he brought these guys, the city racers, up there, and they were like, "Whoa, what is this stuff?" Crashing into the woods and everything else. I mean, he had single track and all kinds of cool stuff. So out of that, a little bit further north, I mean, we were in the Litchfield Hills. This race came out called D2R2, and it had definitely had like a cult following. This is from my GoPro on the D2R2, and so lots of fast descents, lots of steep climbs. I think there was about 8,000 feet of climbing in 110 miles, and guys like Chris Peck, Cannondale's head engineer, did this. A lot of guys from Cannondale did the Tour of Roxbury. My club made something called Tour of Washington. I was living in Washington. This is Washington, Connecticut right here. And so just, really cool roads. What happened out of this, though, when you think about it, is, just jumped ahead somehow. But before we get to like Florida and what's here, what happened in the meantime was about 10 years ago, some of the custom builders like Independent Fabrication and Seven started making custom bikes that were really the first gravel bikes. They had a little bit wider tire clearance, maybe a little bit better brakes, wider gearing. So they were different than cross bikes in that with cyclocross, you're only allowed to use a 33 millimeter width tire. That's the UCI rules. Most racers would probably like to use more than that, but they can't. So what happens with, if you were to build a custom bike 10 years ago, you could say, hey, go to Seven, say, I want to have 40 millimeters of tire clearance, and I want it to have this geometry. And my shop did a lot of that sort of thing, and it was pretty cool. But today, this has become so popular. There's all kinds of gravel events and gravel races. Today, what's happened is the main manufacturers have made some awesome gravel bikes, and I'm going to show a few of those at the end. So 3 years ago, I moved to Florida, and of course, I miss all the big hills, and I miss those cyclocross races and everything else. But I'm really happy to find some great places to ride. And so the first place is the South Florida Water Management District. This has like over 100 miles of levees, and this is right by Sunrise, by Markham Park, and you can just ride almost forever. And we actually took advantage of this. We created a time trial series there in June, and we did 4 weeks. And we had a bunch of guys come, and it was really a lot of fun. We did 10 miles out and back. We timed it, and we edited up the series for the whole event. And so this is really hard pack, kind of almost like sharp coral there. And a cyclocross tire actually doesn't do so well. Something about 40 millimeters rides well on this type of setup. And so a gravel bike is good. Now, a little bit further north from there, and this levee actually connects with this Loxahatchee National Wildlife Refuge. And so this has a 70-mile loop there, which is all mostly levee that you can go around. It's not all open, but I hear people do go around. And I've actually talked to the park manager there, and they're open to doing events. So we may do some sort of Tour of Loxahatchee gravel event coming up in the future. So we're kind of excited about that. So really, there's gravel type roads all the way from south of Sunrise to north of our Boynton store, and even further north from there. So a lot of great places to ride. And this is actually part of the Loxahatchee Trail. I just had my iPhone and was out riding, but it looks like this for a long, long time. Another great place moving to Southwest Florida is this is called the Babcock Cecil Webb Wildlife Area, and I was invited by a great group of riders and from the CRBC club, and great people, to join them on their Wednesday night ride. This is at 5:15, and this is right off of 75, a little bit north of Fort Myers, and really nice riding there. We did about 25 miles, and it's all this kind of dirt road or double track. Again, some kind of sharp stones here and there, but nothing really too soft and hard packed. So this was a lot of fun, and obviously, as this time of year, you're going to need some lights when you get out there as well. But I highly recommend this place. It's fantastic. And then there's another place out by our Estero store close to where I live. And the beauty of that is I can actually ride my gravel bike about 5 miles on the road, which is no problem, to get to the next place, which is called the Estero Bay State Park Preserve. And that place has, this is the Estero Bay. So this has a mixture of kind of double track. It actually has some beach sort of sand like we're on here. It's somewhat seasonal because at some parts of the year this could be underwater, but it's a lot of fun. And you could run maybe 10, 15 miles in this preserve. And here's just kind of a mix of some of the trails we do here. And again, the beauty of a gravel bike is I can ride my bike there on the roads. I can ride the trails and head back home, and it's kind of no problem. So really, really good. So the next thing I'm really going to talk a little bit about is what is a gravel bike and how is it different than a cyclocross bike. And so if we think about a cyclocross bike, if it was designed to have a maximum width of 33 millimeter tires, they're going to make the tolerance tight to that. But when we get to stop this here, we get to a gravel versus a cyclocross bike. First of all, with gravel bikes, a lot of these courses are on very, very steep, long hills, and so you need gearing where you can actually gear down and spin. Whereas with cyclocross, even though there's punchy, steep hills here and there, they're short, and the idea is you get off the bike and you run up with the hill with your bike on your shoulder. So you really need to be shifting down to some kind of 34 cog. It doesn't really work that way. So the gearing's a lot different on a gravel bike. The second thing is most of the gravel bikes, like our checkpoints, have tire clearance up to 45 millimeters. And that's really cool because you just have the versatility of putting whatever type of tire you want on there, depending on the condition. Some of them actually put 650B tires where the diameter of the wheel is a little bit less and the tire is fatter. So that's kind of common and possibility too. And also gravel bikes have disc brakes, almost all of them. And this not only gives you great stopping power, but it opens up to have more clearance for the tire passing through. And there's definitely more mounts. So you can see, I think as this goes away, like I have 3 different water bottle cages on there. There's a top mount. And here you can see more clearance. So that's about I think a 40 millimeter tire. So I could even go something fatter than that if I want to. And that's just a file tread pattern that the bike came with. I've tried a couple others. Tubeless seems to work good too if you're in like a 45 to 40 millimeter tire. So this is the Levy, and that's the stock tire that comes with that bike. So a couple great bikes. This is the bike I have. It's called the Checkpoint SL5. Let me just stop this for a second. The SL5 has an all carbon fiber frame, and by the seat mast there, it has something called the ISOSpeed decoupler. It's actually a form of suspension, so you could be riding over a very rough road, and that sucks it up. And there's really 2 models of the Checkpoint SL version, the carbon version. This one has Shimano 105, and it's $28.99. And then there's an Ultegra version, which is a little bit more expensive and has a little bit nicer wheels and stem and bar on there. But this is a great bike. This is what I'm actually using. And how do we get there? Sorry about that. And the Checkpoint also comes in an aluminum version, and this is called the ALR version. And the entry point here is $18.99. This has Tiagra and disc brakes, a really light aluminum frame, very bomb-proof type of bike. This has been popular. The guy who won our time trial series at the Levy was on this bike, so it was definitely fast enough for him. It was faster than me. So this is a great bike, and recommend that. And then if you did want to get a cyclocross bike, one of the cool ones is called the Crockett, and the Crockett 5 disc is pretty inexpensive. There's some on sale, some closeouts right now for $16.99. Again, you're just not going to have the same type of clearance there. And usually the cross bikes have a 1x drivetrain, so a single chain ring in the front, so the chain doesn't come off. And then a lot of people, just if you just want to ride and get some recreation and go on some of these rides, a good option is just get a really solid kind of hardtail. This is a 29er Excalibur 8. So something like this is fine. I mean, on the ride that we did last Wednesday at Babcock, quite a few people were actually on 29ers and were hanging in fine. So here's some really good options. And I hope this kind of overview has helped you give a little insight on not only the background of gravel bikes, but some of the cool options of where we can ride here, and and some of the places where you can ride here, and some of the great bikes that we have to help you out with that. And so I want to thank you for watching. If you're interested and you like this, give us a thumbs up, follow the Trek Florida Facebook page, and feel free to just leave a comment, whatever you're thinking. If you have an idea for next week's topic, I'd love to hear it. I'd love to cover any kind of technical or product related stuff. And so I'm trying to do this every Tuesday at 11 o'clock. If I don't have any technical difficulties, I think it was more like 11:10. So thanks again. Have a great day and go out and ride today.